I don't remember the brand, but they were just very inexpensive. They were about $25.
And then you go, and then step
I
back.
can't get an insert, for an arch support, and for the short time that I wear them, I really don't need it. And I don't do a lot of walking. Yeah, they're very inexpensive Amazon purchase.
That's where I'm going to India on the 21st of November, and I'll be back.
I don't even know what
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special behind-the-scenes panel for Hello Dolly. My name is Shruti Mukund, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement here at Omni Theatre, and it gives me great pleasure to meet you all here and our panelists on the stage. As I always say, this is my one-time chance to be in the limelight. Before Dolly Levi was sweeping into Yonkers with her charm, wit, and impeccable timing, the world had its own matchmakers. Though they didn't have Broadway flair or sequence, from ancient China, where matchmakers negotiated marriages to secure family alliances, to India, Swayambara, where brides and grooms were carefully guided in choosing their partners, societies have long relied on skilled connectors to bring people together. In Europe, matchmakers worked quietly behind the scenes to arrange unions that balance love, money, and social standing. Maybe love last. Across Africa and the Middle East, respected elders and community figures ensured relationships honored both hearts and families. The tools and traditions have changed over centuries, but the goal, connecting people meaningfully, remains the same. I can personally attest to the merits of this kind of arranging. About 25 years ago, my husband and I were introduced to family connections. My husband's first cousin was my neighbor, and she introduced her aunt to my mother. And then we met as families, and then I met my husband. And at the same time, I was also meeting other potential matches, but something clicked with my husband, and literally within 3 weeks, we were married. We exchanged a few emails. This was the time of AOL Messenger, so we were chatting with each other, sending witty emails. I joke with him now that he used up all his charm over the emails of the 3 weeks we met in India, and then we came here and crash landed into reality. But experiences like ours really highlight how families who know us well can help guide meaningful connections while still leaving space for personal choice and chemistry. Fast forward to today, and the matchmaking world has exploded into apps, algorithms, and curated events. Dolly Levi might raise an eyebrow at a swipe right culture, but the heart of her work, bringing people together, still resonates. Tonight, we'll explore how Dolly's old-world charm compares with the modern world of matchmaking. We're joined by an extraordinary panel of panelists, experts from psychologists to community matchmakers to researchers on online romance. Here to share insights, stories, and maybe a little Dolly-style wisdom. Let's welcome Professor Juhi Ramaprasad, Associate Professor of Information Science and Systems at the University of Maryland. She studies online platforms, social influence, and the impact of digital engagement. Perfect for helping us understand the world of apps and algorithms. Thanks for being here, Juhi. Next, we have Miriam Levitin, founder of Love with Love, a community-based matchmaking service that's servicing the Jewish community here in the DMV. Miriam creates meaningful matches and curated events to spark authentic connections. Thanks for being here, Miriam. And then we have Dr. Hilary Klein, a licensed psychologist specializing in relationships, attachment, and life transitions. She brings insight into what makes people ready for love. And unfortunately, our fourth panelist could not be here today thanks to the debacle of airports being closed and flights not taking off. She's Chicago-based, but she sends her wishes to us. We miss just being here today. Okay, so Dolly Levi is known for wit, social savvy, and connecting people. Which of these things still work today?
Well, definitely there's a lot of social savvy involved in connecting people. I think anyone who has been single and been looking for a relationship has asked people in their life to set them up, and they've probably experienced people in their life being very well-meaning, trying to connect them with other people they know who are single. But just because two people are single and looking for a relationship doesn't mean that they're a good match for each other. So I do think there is a skill involved in connecting people, whether it's for love or for friendship. I've always been a community builder. Before I started matchmaking more formally, I would host friends for Shabbat dinners, for gatherings. I would find that my friends would end up meeting other friends that they didn't know and start hanging out independently of me, that people would start dating who met at those events. So there's definitely a skill in connecting people and having that kind of social savviness.
So I guess Miriam is our modern day Dolly. Did you go for it?
I mean, I can give the technological perspective. So within online platforms, I study online dating and online matrimonial platforms, actually. And the first impression that you make is still critically important, and that impression is your dating profile. I don't know if anybody in this room has made a dating profile or no, I'm getting shakes, but it's the first impression, right? So on matrimonial sites, it's not just the person who wants the match who is on the site, it's also the parent who is on the site. So you have to make the first impression that way. So having this wit, social savvy, but also like understanding what the family is interested in, not only the individual is interested in. I'll add to this a little bit later if it makes sense, but I just read a statistic today that 20% of profiles on online dating sites are being generated by AI. And so this is a whole nother level of, are we able to convey the wit that we want to, our personality that we want to, and are we just going to have AI profiles, communicating with AI profiles going forward? And what does that mean for kind of the individual authenticity that we care about, or that Dolly cared about, I think.
So actually that, you know, in high school, I mean, AI is getting better and better, but when my daughter, my older one, was in high school, the AI had just started, and she did an English essay with the prompts the teacher gave, and it turns out that 10 other kids in the class had used the same prompt, and they had a similar essay. So the teacher didn't know that they had used AI, but the teacher had thought they'd all kind of copied from the same thing. So the teacher calls them aside and says, "Did you guys copy from each other?" And they're like, no, I don't even know this other kid, but he just happens to be in my class. So then she made them rewrite the essay in the room separately, and she was like, "I'm never going to trust AI ever again."
Yeah. I mean, now I can go down the AI like rabbit hole if you want, but the piece of it is that you can train it for your personality. So you kind of tell the system who you are, what you care about, it starts learning the type of questions that you ask, and eventually it knows who you are. Like I don't know if anybody uses ChatGPT, but if you ask ChatGPT after you've had many conversations with it, tell me about myself, it'll tell you about yourself. And then you'll be a little bit scared about what you might reveal and how it figured certain things out about yourself. But in this way, you can train it, but absolutely is the individualism kind of being taken away, and the thing that we actually care about when we're trying to connect with people, right? And that's what you're
Absolutely.
yeah.
Did you want to add something about connection?
Well, not on the AI track. There's so many aspects of personality that are so specific to previous relationships, attachments with former partners, with family members, that impacts how they interface with other people, that I can't imagine, but I guess it's possible that AI could figure all of that out. And I think that's what in-person meeting and having a chance to interact and speak and talk and share experiences does that perhaps AI will never be able to do, hopefully.
So matchmaking, like you said, isn't just about apps or data, but it's also about the people. So where does intuition still beat in that algorithm? I mean, you're still connecting people using digital technology. So can you talk a little more about what you do specifically to harness the data, digital tech platforms, but creating your personal?
Yeah, and also just like thinking about the matchmaking field as a whole, people do things differently. So some matchmakers are still very old school, not using technological tools at all. Everything they do is meet with someone face to face, take handwritten notes and everything, and be thinking about things in their head. Whereas other matchmakers are now using a lot of tools not to necessarily use an algorithm to match people, but just to organize information, thinking about how much administrative time it can take to manage all of the different people that you're trying to help. Like I use a lot of digital tools to help me just be more efficient in my work, but not to replace the human aspect of it. I mean, I'm sure you can talk more about how, you know, these kinds of algorithms are only as good as the data that they have. So when you think about dating apps, people are, and often their profiles are already generated by something, not a human hasn't created that profile, and then you're using a non-human source to match non-human profiles with each other. So I always say matchmaking is an art, not a science. So much of what I hear from people about their experiences in dating is they can go out with someone who they're like, this is such a good match. They say on paper, right? Which you could also say could be something an algorithm might connect them because they are aligned in, you know, their place in life, their lifestyles, what they're looking for, values. But there's something else missing from that, and that's chemistry, connection, love. So, you know, historically, matchmaking has been more connected to arranged marriages, especially in certain cultures. And for me, within the Jewish culture, the more religious Jewish people always meet through someone else, and they have a particular courtship process that way. And then what I'm doing is helping people who are Jewish, who want to meet other people who are Jewish. They're not necessarily that religious, but just want to meet someone who has a shared cultural background. So yeah, historically marriage was not about love at all. It was about social status, being, you know, being taken care of financially, especially at a time when women could not live financially without a man. And in different cultures, it was important to have different families that become, you know, unite, because of social status and things like that. But today, marriage is much more about love, and that's something that, yeah, I don't know if one day, it's hard to imagine an AI being good enough to predict those kinds of things about what makes people connect, but there's definitely a lot of intuition now that goes into getting a sense of someone, you know, socially, and like who they might vibe with and connect with. I think I would laugh if I saw an algorithm match the people I work with, and I think I would laugh and say, oh, they won't like each other, even if they're technically looking for the same things. There's such a human element to it that's not captured.
Maybe there's a study in future between the two of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add briefly to that. Yeah, I think that's right on. And I think when I've worked with online dating companies, their goal is always to facilitate an online connection, but get them offline as soon as possible, right? So you want people to connect online. They try to make the algorithm work the best it can, and I'll get to the data in a second. But the real match happens once they get offline and they meet for coffee or whatever it is that happens. So in terms of the data, absolutely, the algorithm can only match on the data that you provide, right? And so if you think about the types of questions that one can ask, it's about, you know, very descriptive characteristics that you can quantify, right, that you can measure. It's really, really hard to incorporate in kind of how you feel in a given situation, or if you know, different things that we feel offline. Sites try to do this. If anybody's kid or friend who has had experience with OkCupid, they asked a variety of very interesting questions, and they found that this one question that asked, like, would you throw everything in your life away and go live on a boat for a year? It was like the most predictive question of whether a match would end up, right? Would end up working. And so it tries to get at this kind of piece of you that you can't really quantify in the algorithm. The last thing I'll add to this, and I'll pass it on if you have anything to add, is, what was I gonna add? Is that people are very good at thinking they know what they want, but are very bad at actually knowing what they want, right? And so I thought I knew what type of guy I was gonna marry, right? And not the person I married at all. And that is very, very, very common, right? So you can say, I want, this person with this height and this education, et cetera, and in the end, like, who you end up matching with or wanting to be with is completely different. And so that's where the data is also flawed, right? Because these are self-reported pieces of information that you're giving to the algorithm. So
Yeah, you'll make my dad happy. That's why he decided to get us married young. Because he's like, anyway, you don't know what you want, so we think we know better than you.
So I'm also not saying, just to be clear, that the parents know better than what their kids want, right? Because I had that conversation with my parents as well. Would you like to add?
Well, I guess just to say you can have a fantasy, lots of people do, of what they think that they want or what they think is going to make them happy. And then the reality is often very different.
Yes.
And
So I have a follow-up question, right? So we're talking about all this data and how people perceive themselves and they put themselves out on these online platforms, and then how people who are receiving it then think, and then the algorithm decides a whole bunch of things for them. And this is not just in matchmaking, as in getting together, right? This is also which restaurant you're going to go to, which thing you're going to buy, how many websites you're going to look. How is that impacting the psychology of these, millennials and younger Gen Zs who that's how they're doing things now? Like everything has to. I remember in the Modern Romance book that Aziz Ansari wrote. Yeah, he wrote about how he did this whole study in New York where everyone who got married of a certain age met within 5 miles of each other. And they were neighbors, or they knew somebody and they met at a party. But then now it's like, there's so many fish in the sea. That's what I hear all the time. Like the young kids, they're like, yeah, it's fine. Like, or, and they get to 30 and if they've not met anyone, it's much harder to meet. So what are you seeing on the other side when you're actually speaking to these people who are talking about their psychological, or emotional ideas?
I'm seeing a lot of dating fatigue and a lot of disappointment and isolation because maybe my sample is skewed, what I'm seeing, but I have 3 semi-adult children.
I mean, if they're having a great time, I don't know if they're coming to you, right? So you are seeing a very skewed sample size.
But I also have 3 young adult children, so I hear things. They're my source of information often, and I hear that these dating online platforms are very fatiguing, and a lot of people that I've heard of are retreating from them and trying to go back to the kind of old-fashioned ways of meeting people, which are about proximity, closeness, similarity, shared values, and those are glue that can bring people together.
So, Miriam, do you want to tell us what got you into matchmaking? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about there's all of these decisions that we have to make, and we're confronted with this onslaught of information. It is really bad for us psychologically because it's leading to a decision paralysis where you feel like you can never be comfortable with your decision because you think something better is always out there. Life was simpler when you didn't have this many choices, when you married the butcher's daughter who lived next door, right? I mean, I forget what the statistic is. My friend told me this. It's a staggering number of people who would never went outside of their hometown for the longest time. It's only in very recent history that people are much more mobile. You can move anywhere, you can have any job, there's all these people out there to meet. You can get on an app and within 5 minutes you can scroll through people who live 500 miles away from you. So people are absolutely fatigued with dating and the dating apps, and people are going on a lot of dates and they're having a hard time figuring out, how do I know? They've also been fed this narrative from the media that love is like this fireworks that goes off as soon as you meet somebody, that there has to be this spark. And the reality is that's not the case for most people. And we don't want a spark that's going to fizzle out. We want a slow burn, something that's going to last for a long time. Some of the qualities that make people feel some of the qualities that make people feel that kind of initial feeling are not actually what contributes to long-term compatibility and relationship satisfaction. Some of what people confuse with a spark feeling are actually feelings of nervousness and not feeling comfortable around somebody. So and then, or people might say, oh, I've been out with someone a bunch of times and we're having a good time, there's something wrong, but like, how do I stop swiping? How do I stop looking? So I think we're really overwhelmed with the amount of choices.
So actually, the other thing I've been noticing is that again, I'm dating myself, and I say this, and I'm not at all. It's not something wrong, but I feel our children have a much better vocabulary about emotional articulation, what their boundaries and what they want. It's great, but to the point that but then there's also this swinging too much to the side of like canceling something, or like, oh, nothing happened, so that's over. But I'm like, nothing. There's no instant chemistry for that, right? So like, I don't. It gets then very limiting. How do you then find that spark? It doesn't always happen. I mean, the only reason again, I don't make it as math. I'm just joking here, but I'm like, the reason I had that spark at 21 was my life worldview was so much smaller, and I was ready for this adventure, right? But if I'm jaded and I'm 30 and I've done this like a million times, how are you going to get the spark? It is a chemical reaction that may or may not happen, but at 30, what you need is very different than what you needed at 21. And now at, in my mid 40s, the things I need from life are very different. And so you grow older with your partner. It's not the same thing. So you have to age. You grow up together, right? And so if you don't find that pathway and you're like fixated about this one person being your soulmate, I think it's really hard.
Yeah, you have. I also find out with the people that I work with who've been dating for longer, who've been single for longer, they have created a whole rich life for themselves, full of friends and routines and living styles and habits, that it's really hard to find someone else that aligns with all of those things. Whereas someone who starts dating younger, you grow in those ways together. So I think that is one challenge too. And people sometimes, again, because of what we see in movies and TV shows, you kind of expect that it'll just happen to you. I hear that from people a lot. They're like, how did everyone just told me, like, oh, of course you're going to meet someone, you're going to get married. And they're like, I blinked and now I'm 40 and I can't believe I'm here and I'm still single. So these days, it might require some effort to put into intentionally dating and trying to meet people, and that takes time, and it takes time to really get to know someone and figure out if you're compatible and if there's a chemistry there that might not be there on your first impression. I think we have very short attention spans now. So we meet someone and we're quickly like, oh, I don't like them. Making these quick judgments about them because we're used to swiping, where you see someone and you have to decide yes or no immediately based on very limited information to even see the next person. So you're primed to just keep swiping and make these snap judgments. So I think even in person, people meet and they're like, oh, I don't like this person. And if they got to know them a little bit better, they might actually have chemistry with them.
Yeah, actually there's a podcast called Snap Judgment. I don't know if anyone here has heard of it. So they pick different themes and how human beings make a snap judgment. Actually, before we continue, I'm just curious. How many of you here feel your partner is your one and only soulmate, and everything you do from morning till night and every activity that you do together? I'm just curious.
I think you're putting them in a tough spot.
Because and traditionally, women have always had like knitting circles, book clubs, cooking clubs, and then traditionally men have had like card rooms, whatever, like the gentleman's club, the different places where you can also go socialize and then come back and be a couple. And I think that there's this unrealistic thing that this one human being has to fulfill all of that. Yeah. And can you say something to that? When what you're seeing in the trends and in couples?
I think it depends. It's very person dependent or couple dependent. that's part of finding an appropriate match, is finding somebody who shares the vision of what the couple is together and what's needed. If you have one person, it's lopsided and it doesn't work so well. It can be very challenging. So I think that's one of the things that it's helpful to talk through prior to making a commitment with each other. And of course that can change over the course of one's lifetime, what's important, and learning to evolve together and talking about that and working through those challenges is just one of the tasks of a relationship.
So Julie, before you go into more of the data question, I'm curious why you picked, like, how did you get into this part of your study focus?
Okay, so in academic audiences, what I say is I was really interested in how technology was shaping individual behavior, and I am. That is what I study. But really, I know I went to high school with the guy who started OkCupid. So this is how, in doing research, data is always like primary. I talked to him. He was a friend. He is a friend. And he always said, Julie, everybody asks me for data, and you're not asking me for data. And I said, yes, because you're my friend. I'm not going to put you in this situation, right? Or I'm not going to cross those boundaries. Anyway, we ended up working with them. We ran field experiments on OkCupid. It was part of their kind of who they were, was to experiment to make the user experience better. And so that's how I started. And part of it is that in online platforms or digital kind of spaces where you can meet each other, you can do things that you cannot do in the offline world. And so one of the first studies we did was about how you can browse anonymously on online dating platforms, right? So I can go and look at all of your profiles and you can have no clue that I've looked at you, right? And you can't, we always said when I did presentations on this, when you go into a bar or you go into all these other spaces, you can't check out every person in the room and then say, okay, you know, you can't really kind of make that, do that very subtly. And so this whole idea that technology afforded you kind of ways of engaging with people that you couldn't before. The other piece of it, and I kind of wanted to dig into this a little bit if you don't mind, and just take me off another track if you want, but is yes, people are getting decision fatigue, information overload. Actually, the number of online dating users has declined significantly in the last several years, but there is something to say for a portion of individuals who could not necessarily find matches, you know, within the geographic area that they are, right? So there is something to say for the platforms that say, hey, you know, early on in technology, outside of dating, it was people who had some sort of rare diseases. Online communities allowed across geography for you to connect, right? And it's kind of the same, to connect with people you might not find in your local geography, right? So it's the same for dating, is if you know, whatever it is that kind of differentiates you and makes you feel like you can't find a match where you live, platforms, digital platforms kind of afford you the ability to do that a little bit more. One thing that I'll just say to end my little spiel right now is we thought this meant that when women got on online platforms, and we studied heterosexual dating mostly because of the data that was available to us, we thought, okay, this is going to change the social norms, right? Historically, women don't make the first move. No, not at all. Men sent 5 times the number of messages that women sent on these platforms. And only when there was a subtle way for women to make a first move did that happen. So it was really sad for me in some ways. Hopefully things are changing, right? But that this wasn't like the big shift that I thought we would see in kind of reshaping the social dynamics, right, around dating and marriage. So that's what I'll say. So these kind of niche communities have value despite the fact that the rest of us are getting.
So Miriam, do you want to talk about how many women versus male clients you have, and what we were discussing when you and I talked? So about how people approach you and how you match them in person.
Sure. I mean, there's so many gender dynamics in dating and in matchmaking, and a lot of people do ask me, you know, oh, well, it's funny, there's different assumptions. Some people are like, oh, you must have a lot of men, but be looking for women, or vice versa. And I also work with people of all sexual orientations. I will say, you know, overall it's pretty gender balanced, but within certain age groups, it's not. there's more men who come to me who are in the younger age range, and more women who are in the older age range. So that's been interesting. Yeah, you know, if anyone ever consented to a study, I'm sure you could do very interested, research studies about the data and like what, you know, I could hypothesize about why that might be. I mean, one thing I found with age is that a lot of men are looking to date a woman who's younger. So you end up with, well, there's more women than men in the DC area, just statistically. And then you have more women ending up older who are single because the men their age would prefer to date a woman who's younger. So that's definitely a dynamic that I have seen. And then in terms of just matching people in general, like what you were.
Like how do you curate those in-person events?
Oh, okay. So I directly connect people for matchmaking, for matches, and then I also have been hosting events. And I'm trying with my events to facilitate an environment where people can have a deeper connection in person. So knowing that people are fatigued with these dating apps, how do we create an environment in person where people can more authentically connect? Because a lot of the dating events that happen around the city are speed dating, where you sit one-on-one with someone for 5 or 10 minutes, move over and speak to the next person, etc. And then after you say if who you're interested in, and they'll connect you if there's a mutual interest. I haven't been very interested in doing those kinds of events, especially in my community. Some people know each other already, so you might already know someone's not the right fit. And then other events are just like singles happy hour at a bar. Show up, everyone there is single, and these happen in DC, and 200, 300 people show up. So we know people are craving in-person connection, but personally, I don't think that having 200 single people at a bar is the best way to help people. Like, how many relationships have come out of that? I don't know. But I try to host events that are more based around an activity, around shared interests. Like I took 20 people to a baseball game, and one relationship came out of that. They were both interested in going to a baseball game and enjoyed watching the game together, exchanged numbers, went on dates, and now they're together. I hosted Shabbat dinner, so you have the cultural, the religious connection that's important to a lot of people. And I have question prompts to help people engage on a deeper level. Especially in DC, a lot of people say their dates feel like interviews. Where are you from? What do you do for work?
The Overheard in Washington, it's an Instagram account. If you are on Instagram, you can look at it. It's hilarious. It'll be people over here at different things and put it up online. And it's like, yeah, that guy's probably working on the hill. And, it's like all these things that, immediately you see the person and you hear one line they say, you're like, okay, finish. Moving on.
Yeah, people have said on that, like they go on a date and then the person adds them on LinkedIn afterwards and message them and says, I'm actually looking for a job in that field. Could you connect me? So there's a lot of overlap between career networking and dating. But dating is a lot about networking, especially matchmaking. You asked me for how I got into this. I saw my community and my friends struggling with this. And it's, if somebody had all the answers to dating, there wouldn't be everyone trying another new app and another new in-person dating opportunity. No one has the answer, so I encourage people to do everything they can to meet people. So connect with me. Also tell everyone in your life that you're single and what you're looking for, and prioritize going to events where you might meet, where you have a higher chance of 1, meeting new people, and 2, meeting new people you might be interested in. So you might have a friend or someone you've been on a date with before that's not a good fit for you, but you go to their birthday party and you meet their coworker and their roommate and their roommate's boyfriend's sister, right? Like dating is like networking, and that way that's how you met your husband.
Yeah,
so.
no, I think I don't mean to assume, but I think for this audience, we're kind of preaching to the choir in some ways of how you met. So with friends, I mean, is anyone here, did anyone here use online or a matchmaking service to get together. Thank you, Jamie. Anyone else? Yeah, cool. Okay, no, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was like trying to make sure we think. Uh, so the other thing I wanted to address is that there's this whole commitment phobia stigma on Gen Zs and like millennials. It's like they're together but they don't want to marry, or like like my daughter goes through situationships, which I still don't know what that means. Everyone here heard the word situationship?
No.
Okay, so situationship is not a relationship. It's not dating, but they're exclusive and they go out with each other. And
It's their exclusive.
mostly, right? Mostly. So it's that the exclusive is the iffy part, but then they are together, but they don't want to be called date, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever friend, not a special friend, but their situation shipping, or I don't even know if that's the word. So what is that phenomenon that do you see any? I mean, other than your children, do you have any of the younger clients?
Who are in a situationship?
Or what is this commitment phobia? What is it also part of this whole like, I have too many options, I don't know if I'm going to commit, the commitment,
I think it's highly dependent, but the idea of what it takes to work through conflict, I think, is sometimes very challenging for people to decide whether they want to do that or not, depending on what they've seen modeled for them, what their current situation is, what relationships they've been in before, what their conflict resolution skills are, and just finding that resilience and drive to be able to do that.
And do you think the pandemic impacted a lot of this and the
I think
social isolation?
I think absolutely. I think the idea that people are increasingly feeling isolated and alone is a big part of that, and realizing what does it take to, what are the ingredients that create a hearty, resilient relationship? A whole host of experiences load onto that. So there's a lot of specificity.
This is not my area of expertise, but I do teach 18-year-olds, freshmen in college. I also think that there's just a shift in what people believe they need to have in their life, right? I think you mentioned before, we used to get, my parents, there was no way I wasn't gonna get married if I was gonna have kids. Like, there was a specific life path I had to have, right? It included going to grad school. Like, I was not given choices, because of my parents were immigrant parents from India, and this was just how it was. But I think there are different things that students or from their students, but kids are seeing modeled for them in terms of what their path can be. And I don't know if this is a bad thing. I don't know if we need to say like everybody needs to end up with a match.
Well, yeah. And also, I think increasingly people are exploring their sexuality, and they see from friends and colleagues that there are a lot of choices. And so there's not just one path, there's a lot of freedom. And sometimes people want to make sure that they've explored all possible paths. And so there's a concern that if they commit too early, that they may be missing out on something.
Opportunity costs.
But also staying with just one person or just coupled with just one person for all your life is, from what I've read, is a much more modern concept. It's so Alain de Botton, he's a modern day philosopher, if you will. He's written a lot of books about relationships and things. And he has this whole YouTube channel called School of Life, and he has all these things, and he charts the history of when two individuals coming together became a norm, and the fact that they had to live together forever, this whole concept, right? Because mortality rates were much lower. So they didn't have to live together for 65 years. So it's really interesting when you add data and science and everything else that then adds to the pressures of coupling and what it means to be coupled or not coupled, or the longevity of the coupling. And then of course there's this whole societal side of like looking down on uncoupled people.
Yeah.
The reason of singleness, or she's not good looking, that's why she's still single, or he doesn't make enough money, that's why he's still single. Like that, like the judgment that comes from it, right? So actually I was going to ask you guys, how has anyone watched the Indian Matchmaker on Netflix? Seemanti? So it is the most judgmental matchmaker. It represents a whole bunch of people who are matchmakers like that. So in some ways, it's like even before she matches the people, she'll start dismissing, saying, you want too much, you're expecting this, your mother might not like her, but you should still marry her, or you're whatever, like she'll be like, oh, she's very haughty because she makes a lot of money. And I'm like, really? And again, to your point, the new generation is raised very differently. They don't settle, period. Not even for less. You don't settle. You work really hard to get where you are. You earned your whatever degrees, money, whatever, and you want what you want. So you are
and people aren't as much of a rush anymore. I think people do reach a certain point, which is a different age depending on what has happened in their life, but people are prioritizing their careers, exploring, meeting people. It's now more acceptable to say, I enjoy spending time with this person, and I'm not ready to know if this is the only person I'm ever going to be with. We can just enjoy being together now. And I've heard from what people have told me, some of the horrible things they've heard from other matchmakers, from friends. I tell people I don't judge them, and I really try to, people, like, sometimes a phone call with someone, they just cry the whole time. People are having such bad experiences in dating, and a big part of my role is just supporting them through that and cheering them on and saying you deserve love. And also that, I don't think that being in a romantic relationship is necessary for everyone's happiness. But when that's something people want and they're not getting, I help them find that and support them as they, there's nothing that unless you're, as long as you're treating people respectfully and being right, like you're having any characteristics about you are not wrong. And, there's a lot of, there's still a lot of biases and discrimination within dating that happens, stigma around people who don't fit in with a conventional standard, that it definitely impacts a lot of people too.
Right, and so in some ways the anonymity online and being able to swipe is helpful.
Yeah.
And takes away that kind of judgment before they get to the next step.
Yeah.
So what do they see in the data?
Yeah. So the challenge right now with online dating, given this dynamic, right, that people swipe is, and I'm not trying to be disparaging of one gender, but what the data shows is that men tend to swipe on everybody and then let the women kind of be selected, right? And then it becomes a match, and then you figure out what the next step is, right? So this is strategic behavior. So then the platforms kind of add new features to limit swipes, and you have to pay. Apparently now paying is considered desperation, right? 20 years ago, it was being on dating sites at all, maybe 20 years ago. Being on dating sites at all was like, oh, you couldn't find somebody the traditional way, and now you have to go to a dating site. That perception was wiped, right? So I've been teaching for 15 years, and every year I've asked people, right, do you date online, right? And for a while, people were hesitant. They'd come up to me individually after class, and then everybody would say yes, like, who's not on a dating site? And now it's back to, well, they're a mess. I can't find a partner, right? Et cetera, et cetera. The downside of meeting online is, if we're bringing up Netflix shows, has anybody seen The Tinder Swindler? Yeah. So this is, right, the verification. Like, how do you verify let me explain what the Tinder swindler is, right? Which is basically this guy who, the way that the media talks about it, preyed on vulnerable women, right? And so kind of would kind of pull them in on Tinder and, say, oh, like, I'm going to fly you to this place. My dad is the CEO of this diamond distributing company. And then, like, there was some website, front page of the website that showed that this might actually be true, and nobody did verification beyond that. And so this guy was able to swindle multiple women out of a lot of money down the line, right? He would bring them in and then kind of say. So this lack of verification, right, online becomes problematic, and kind of a lot of that manipulation can happen. And that's one story, right? There are many, many stories like that. So what the data shows is, right, people are matching online. They have to take it offline to see where, what happens. And that's what dating sites care about, is getting you offline as soon as possible, right? Getting you to because of all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah. Before we get into questions, I just wanted to ask all of you, including our panelists, to help us. So Dolly believed everyone has a perfect match. Just sometimes it takes a little nudge or a top hat moment. Clyde wants someone tall, wealthy, and charming, but personality clashes. Dolly's solution, modern day solution. I want ideas. What do you think we need to help this client? What kind of qualities or kind of person should we help find? It's the client wants someone tall, wealthy, and charming.
No.
But personality is clashing. So how do we help this client?
Change their preferences. Change their search.
Change their search online?
You don't want somebody tall, wealthy, and charming.
Yeah, I mean, so like what you shared also about having kind of an idea of who you thought you would marry. I think people get these ideas in their head of what their future spouse will look like. And so I help people think deeper than that, right? I'll use the height one as a good example. I've had people say, I will only date someone who's 5'10" or taller, right? Okay. So I'm like, here's a great person who could be a really good fit for you, but they're 5'9", they're 5'8", whatever it is. So I help people think about what's really beneath that preference. Does it matter what their exact height is, or are there qualities that you're looking for that align with that? Maybe they want to feel small and feel protected. Maybe they want someone who's confident, and they think that someone who's shorter is not going to be as there could be someone who's shorter who's really confident, who has that. The thing that they're really looking for isn't the number on the yardstick or the scale. I don't know. It's not the exact number or data point. It's the quality. So that's what I would say for this, is like finding the person who aligns in the ways that are important. That might be another example is like with travel. Some people say I want someone who likes to travel a lot. Well, there might be somebody who didn't have the financial means to travel in their life, or their immigration status prevented them from doing it, but they have the sense of adventure. They like exploring new cultures and new things, right? So it's not how many stamps they have on their passport, it's they have the spirit that you're looking for.
Any ideas? Any suggestions for this client? Hypothetical client.
Move on.
Move
on.
Can I add something to the height thing? So there's a book by one of the guys who started OkCupid called Data Club, and he just shows that the statistical distribution of the height of people on OkCupid was like 1 full inch higher than what the actual distribution is in the population. So basically that people lie about their height because they know that that is perceived as more attractive. So, yeah.
And the other problem online is that people can't with AI fit their picture.
Oh yeah, and so this is, there's a lot of data stuff to talk about. How can you chat later?
Also, I think sometimes people are looking in another person to fulfill something that's missing in their own lives, and they're hoping that that other person will help them to achieve it. So they're sort of projecting out into another relationship and helping people to think about what they're missing in their own life or how they could achieve that on their own is often helpful in those kinds of preferences, kind of making them a little bit less specific.
So are there any questions? Yes.
When you were when you were talking about the situationship
Right.
and also getting into people exploring their sexuality, I wonder if you would touch upon what they call friends with privileges. Does that tie into that somewhere?
So the question was to elaborate a little bit on friends with privileges, a lot as a continuation of situationship and exploring. So did you want to add about friends with privileges?
I've heard of it, friends with benefits.
Right.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean.
I think it works for some people,
Yeah.
and other people, they're hoping for more, and they're just waiting for it to happen, and they're tolerating the friends with benefits, hoping it turns into something else. I think sometimes, unless you know more about what's involved, it's hard to figure that out. But if everybody's happy and satisfied, but that's not always the case.
And also, I guess it's convenience, time, and place that causes these things to last much longer than it needs to be, because there's, like you were saying, it's like you're looking for something else. So this is like the stopgap arrangement till that something else happens.
Usually one person has stronger feelings than another. It's hard to have two people who feel exactly the same way just because they're engaging in something. There's often variation in what people are feeling about those situations.
Any other questions? Yes.
Based on each of your separate experiences, psychotherapy, data collection, and matchmaking, if someone came to you, and you can choose whether you're male or female, but you're actually different, let's call it age 18 or age 20, and they ask you, what's the one method I need to do to find a mate?
So the question is, if an 18 or a 20-year-old were to come to each of you, what would you advise them on how to find? And in this case, a young woman comes, what would you advise them?
I would advise to have an understanding of, say, a woman herself. What her past relationships have been like, what she thinks she's bringing to a relationship, what she's ready for, her level of confidence, her level of conflict resolution skills, level of commitment, expectations for the relationship, just to have more insight into herself, I think would make her ready, more ready than if she hadn't done this thing.
I think along those lines is authenticity. I think online, what we're studying a lot now is how do you portray your authentic self online in the whole slew of information and ways to be inauthentic. And so I think if this were to happen online, I'd say portray your authentic self, because it's your authentic self who has to be with this person in 3 years, and 6 years, and 9 years. Yeah.
Also vulnerability. Without vulnerability, it's very hard to make connections. And so having internal strength while also being vulnerable is, I think, a good combination for relationship readiness.
I agree 100% with both of those things, like step one is knowing yourself and how to share yourself with others. And then in terms of the practical piece of where to find how to connect with other people, there isn't one answer. Like I said before, if there was an answer to that question, this field wouldn't exist. So it's not the same for every person, but I think being intentional about what works for you, I don't think any of us would say dating apps are all bad, no one should be using them, right? But it's being intentional about using them. Which ones are you using? Why are you using them? How do you, set boundaries around how much time you spend on them? What mindset do you want to be in when you're using them? Are you using them just because you're bored and unfulfilled and swiping, getting the instant gratification of swiping, or are you intentionally sitting down and thinking about what you're looking for and ready to spend a set amount of time swiping intentionally, or choosing to connect with certain people and meet up with them? So really just being intentional about the strategies that you're using, whether it's apps, whether it's the events that you choose to go to, whether it's working with a matchmaker. Also, it's really important to work, when someone works with a matchmaker, to work with someone who's a good fit for them. There's so many different people and different models of how they do things and just their own personality. And, it also has to be a match between the matchmaker and the client. So, yeah.
Since you said 18 or 20, my daughter, the older one, is 20 and she's in college right now. And what I find really interesting is how all the girls are supporting each other. So she's on the cheer team as well as she's in a sorority. So they have something called date nights where they make it gives them the liberty to actually go invite a guy or help a friend set up. Because it becomes really hard when you're going through college, you're also working, you're also trying to get a job for the summer and the winter, whatever. You're constantly going, and then you're on this campus in a small town. So your sample size are the people you already might know. So why not make this a way? And I think it's brilliant. She's still single though. Just kidding. But she is trying, and I like that because it's like something that's happening organically because they're doing this, and every time, I'm like, okay, what did you think? What did you feel? How do you, and like you were saying, having these conversations with our kids about these things and about how it's not like one and done. For me, it was because it was an arranged marriage. It was like, yes, you're going to get married and you're going to live, whatever you do, you're doing with your husband. And I don't think I really knew who I was till I was 35. And it was 15 years into our marriage and both of us learned and grew and things, which is a different way of life. But I don't really want that for my girls. I want them to know who they are before they enter into coupling, right? Because then you go into this space having your authentic voice, having known who you are, with your vulnerability, with knowing your expectations and everything. And that kind of is in line of how most of us Gen Xers are raising our children, where we're giving them these choices. We're asking them to know themselves emotionally.
Well, I think that's true, but also people grow through the lifespan. So it's not just 21 to 35. Mm-hmm. The space from 45 to 60 is also full of changes. And I think finding somebody who can change with you, yes, and who can support those changes and talk through those changes with you. I met my husband in a bar in New York City when I was 21 on St. Patrick's Day, the most unlikely of circumstances. And we both changed so much, and I think there were hard times, but supporting each other and talking through and getting through those times together, and that was really the key, because I think there's going to be change in how we look. I certainly didn't have gray hair then, and bodies change, and there's so many changes that to have those kinds of relationship flexibility is really key.
I'll just add, since we talked about your personal experience, I met my husband at 33, so I, in theory, was my own self, but I got married at 35, kids at, now here it goes, 37, 39, and 42, right? So not what my parents looked for me, but we also, it's a different phase of life when you're having kids and small kids, and it's tough, and growing together at any age, I think is the key.
We're being watchable here. And my fiance is over there, not to call him out, skirting me. So yeah, we met in college, and now we both feel really lucky that we did, seeing what people are going through, where we weren't thinking about, it was neither of our priorities at that time to find our life partner at all. We were so focused on ourselves, who we wanted to be, what our careers wanted to be. And it was actually really challenging to realize we found this person we really want to be with, and how that might conflict with some of the other dreams we had for ourselves, and that we had to ultimately clearly choose each other and make some sacrifices in that way. But we connected in a shared context, being on a college campus We met at the Jewish Center where we did spend a lot of time, and still we met each other a billion times and had no interest in each other until we had close mutual friends who kind of brought us closer together. And then we were friends for a long time before we were in a relationship, which personally I also think was a really great foundation for our partnership. That a lot of people tell me, you know, they're like, I just want to fall in love with my best friend. And I say, how many friends do you have with the gender you want to date? And they say, none. So maybe you want to cultivate some of those relationships. And I think, yeah, the proximity piece is important, and having the shared experiences together. Like we never went on a date. We lived in dorms next to each other, you know, like we just like spent time together, and we had with our friends and doing fun things and making memories together. We never had to sit across from each other at a table meeting for the first time saying, what do you do for work? Where are you from? You know, so
It was more organic.
yes, it was more organic, and that's my bias, is that I'm hoping to help other people connect in that way too, having environments where they can connect with people that isn't just, dating is awkward. I mean, talking to a person you often just met, because whether you met them in real life or from an app, then when you go on a date, talking to a stranger for an hour, you know, there is something awkward about it, and there's a pressure to it. Like I have to decide, do I want to see this person again? Some people say, oh, do I want to marry this person or not? And like, that's not the question you should be asking after one date with someone. You should be asking, do I like them at all? How did I feel when I was with them? So, yeah, dating is very awkward, and I feel very fortunate to have built a relationship with someone in a more community-oriented way that worked really well for us.
So thank you all for sharing your insight, your expertise, and actually, Miriam will be in the campus lobby if you have any specific matchmaker questions. If you have people you want matched, she can help you. But let's give a huge round of applause for. Rises on Hello Dolly. Dolly believed every heart had a dance partner waiting. Sometimes you just need to lead. So don't miss the Meet the Matchmakers event, and this is your chance to speak to them. So head on over, soak up some advice, take a little Dolly magic with you tonight, enjoy the show, and remember, love, laughter, and a touch of mischief are always in style. Dolly style. Thank you guys.